Are you brave enough to uncover the secrets of Ravenwood? Ravenwood. Even the name sounded like a threat. It was a name that carried weight, a name that seemed to echo through the ages, whispering tales of dread and despair. The very mention of Ravenwood sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it, as if the name itself was a harbinger of doom. It perched on the edge of Blackwater Forest, a forest so dense and dark that even the bravest souls hesitated to venture into its depths. The trees stood tall and foreboding, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the sun, casting the forest floor into perpetual twilight. The forest was shrouded in a perpetual mist that seemed to seep from the trees themselves, as if the very essence of the forest was exhaling a cold, damp breath. The mist clung to everything it touched, wrapping the town in a ghostly embrace that never seemed to lift. The town was a forgotten place, bypassed by progress and shrouded in an unsettling silence. It was as if time itself had turned its back on Ravenwood, leaving it to wither and decay. The streets were empty, the buildings crumbling, and the air thick with a sense of abandonment. The houses were old, their paint peeling like scabs, revealing the raw, weathered wood beneath. Each house seemed to tell a story of neglect and despair, their once vibrant colours now faded and lifeless. The roofs sagged under the weight of years, and the walls leaned as if they were tired of standing. The windows were dark eyes, watching, judging. They seemed to follow you as you walked by, their empty gaze filled with a silent accusation. It was as if the very soul of the town was peering out from those windows, bearing witness to every secret, every sin. The townsfolk kept to themselves, their faces etched with a weariness that ran deeper than time. Their eyes were hollow, their expressions guarded, as if they carried the weight of the town's secrets on their shoulders. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices barely more than whispers, as if afraid that the very walls had ears. It was a secret whispered on the wind, a secret etched into the very fabric of the town. The wind carried the echoes of long-forgotten tales, stories of darkness and despair that had been passed down through generations. It was a wind that seemed to speak, its voice a haunting melody that sent chills down your spine. It was the legend of Jeff the Killer, a name that was spoken in hushed tones, a name that struck fear into the hearts of those who heard it. Jeff the Killer was more than just a legend. He was a spectre that haunted the town, a shadow that lurked in the corners of every room, a presence that could be felt even in the brightest of days. His story was one of madness and murder, a tale that had been twisted and distorted over the years, but one thing remained constant: the fear. The fear that he was still out there, watching, waiting. The fear that he could strike at any moment without warning. The fear that Ravenwood would never be free of his dark influence. And so, the town of Whispers remained, a place where the past and present intertwined, where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred, and where the legend of Jeff the Killer lived on, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. The story had started long ago. A tragic accident, a house fire, a disfigured boy driven to madness. Jeff, they called him. His face, burned beyond recognition, became a grotesque mockery of a smile. Some said he had carved it himself, a permanent grin to mask the pain. He vanished after that night, but the legend lived on. Whispers became rumors, rumors became stories, and stories sometimes have a way of becoming real.
Emily had always been drawn to the darkness. It wasn't the kind of darkness that people feared, the kind that brought about evil deeds or malevolent spirits. No, Emily's fascination was with the darkness of the unknown, the mysteries that lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of the unknown. She was captivated by the stories that lurked in the corners of old houses, the legends that were passed down through generations, and the eerie tales that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The stories that sent shivers down your spine, the ones that made you question what was real and what was just a figment of your imagination. These were the stories that Emily sought out, the ones that made her feel alive in a way that nothing else could. The legends whispered in hushed tones, the ones that were too frightening to be spoken aloud in the light of day. Emily would spend hours poring over old books and websites, searching for new tales to satisfy her curiosity. One night she stumbled upon a forum thread. It was late, and the house was silent except for the soft hum of her computer. The thread was dedicated to Jeff the Killer, a figure she had heard of but never really explored. A thread dedicated to Jeff the Killer. The more she read, the more engrossed she became. The stories were chilling, filled with gruesome details and eerie encounters. They painted a picture of a figure that was both terrifying and fascinating. The stories chilled her to the bone. Each account was more horrifying than the last, and yet she couldn't stop reading. There was something about the way the stories were told, the way they drew her in and made her feel as though she was right there experiencing the terror firsthand. Yet, she couldn't tear herself away. The more she read, the more she felt an unsettling fascination with the legend. It was as though she was being pulled into a dark vortex, one that she couldn't escape from even if she wanted to. The more she read, the more she felt an unsettling fascination with the legend. She found herself returning to the forum night after night, searching for new stories and updates. It became an obsession, one that she couldn't shake. The darkness that had once been a source of curiosity had now become a part of her, a shadow that followed her wherever she went.
The sighting started slowly. A glimpse of a pale face in a window, a fleeting figure darting through the trees. At first, Emily dismissed them as tricks of the light, figments of her overactive imagination, but the fear lingered. It coiled in her stomach, a cold, slithering thing. The shadows seemed to grow longer in Ravenwood. The whispers on the wind sounded more like screams.
It happened on a night choked by fog. I was walking home alone, my breath catching in my throat with each step. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the silence was deafening. Every sound seemed amplified, from the rustling of leaves to the distant hum of traffic. I could feel the cold seeping into my bones, making each step more laborious than the last. The fog wrapped around me like a shroud, obscuring my vision and heightening my sense of unease. Then I saw him, standing at the end of the street, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the streetlight. He was just a silhouette at first, a dark figure against the fog, but as I got closer, the details became clearer. His posture was unnaturally still, almost statuesque, and it sent a shiver down my spine. The streetlight cast long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance around him, adding to the surreal and terrifying atmosphere. His face, a mask of unnaturally white skin stretched into a grotesque grin. It was as if he was wearing a mask, but I knew it was his real face. The grin was too wide, too unnatural, and it seemed to mock me. His skin was pale, almost luminescent in the dim light, and it contrasted sharply with the darkness around him. The sight of his face filled me with a sense of dread that I had never felt before. His eyes, ringed in black, burned with an unholy light. They were the eyes of someone who had seen and done unspeakable things. They seemed to pierce through the fog and darkness, locking onto me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. It was as if he could see into my very soul, and what he saw amused him. The malevolence in his gaze was palpable, and it made me want to turn and run, but I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear.
Go to sleep. The words were barely a whisper, but they echoed in my mind like a scream. His voice was raspy like nails on a chalkboard, and it sent chills down my spine. It was a command, not a suggestion, and it filled me with a sense of impending doom. The way he said it with such calm and certainty made it clear that he had no doubt I would obey.
He rasped, his voice a chilling whisper that seemed to claw its way into her very soul. It was as if the words themselves had a physical presence, wrapping around her heart and squeezing. She could feel the fear taking hold, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. The world around her seemed to fade away, leaving only the darkness and the terrifying figure before her. She knew she had to get away, but her body refused to move, trapped in the grip of his sinister command.
I screamed, a primal sound of terror that ripped through the silence. I turned and ran, my lungs burning, my legs heavy with fear. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear him. His footsteps, soft and deliberate, echoed behind me. The rasp of his voice, closer now, sent chills down my spine.
Emily's disappearance sent shockwaves through Ravenwood. Whispers turned to panicked shouts. Fear, long dormant, now bloomed in the hearts of the townsfolk. The police searched, but they found nothing. No trace of Emily, no sign of an intruder, only the echo of fear that hung heavy in the air. The legend of Jeff the Killer had resurfaced. But was it merely a legend? Or had something truly evil returned to Ravenwood? The line between reality and nightmare blurred. The shadows seemed to hold their breath. The silence whispered Emily's name. Emily's room remained untouched. Her books lay open, her clothes scattered about, frozen in time. A chilling reminder of the girl who had vanished without a trace, lost in the darkness, claimed by the legend she had so eagerly sought. On Emily's computer screen, a message glowed in the darkness. A single phrase typed in a chillingly familiar font. Go to sleep. The legend of Jeff the Killer was reborn, and Ravenwood would never be the same.